a real-world explanation of what this is. As we sit here in the WROK studios, we watch, for the first time maybe this year, landscapers out there cutting the lawns of this private property that the Town Square Media's radio stations sit on. If this were city property and you wanted to, or the person in charge of the grounds for the city wanted to hire landscapers to maintain the city property and do things, you, by law, correct me if I'm wrong, have to hire certain types of contractors that cost a heck of a lot more than, let's say, the private contractor out there mowing the lawn, which really skyrockets the costs of things, right? Is that? I'm just trying to give a real-world example for listeners who might understand.
It's along those lines. It's a little more complex. For certain types of jobs that may be considered more of a maintenance job, we may not be required to pay prevailing wage, but if it ends up being considered a construction job, so I'll give you an example, and this is as bizarre as it gets.
Okay.
If we plant a tree where there's not been a tree planted before, it's considered a prevailing wage governs it. We have to pay prevailing wage rate, which is about double what we would pay if we were just replacing a tree. Same sort of tree, same size tree. Mm-hmm. In one case, we're replacing one. In one case, it's a new tree where there hadn't been one. That's the kind of insanity we have to go through.
And for listeners who don't know,
same work.
Prevailing wage is much higher than what the market would decide to pay somebody for that.
So we would pay typically a laborer's wage rate under the prevailing wage scale and schedule. You know, those of us who think we have a free market would never envision, you know, during the Cold War that we'd have these institutions setting up wage rates, which we do in the state of Illinois. It's government bureaucrats deciding based on market data that they look at what the rates will have to be that we have to pay for various types of work that gets done. So for electricians, carpenters, etc.
There's a minimum wage most people can grasp. You cannot by law pay somebody in a restaurant or pay somebody at a service desk somewhere less than, what is it, $8.25 an hour now, I think it is in Illinois. Don't quote me on that. And so, but these prevailing wages for other jobs are set by law, have to be, I'm just throwing them out there, like for a landscaper, let's say, or for somebody planting a tree or pouring in concrete, like $50 an hour or $60 an hour.
And the difficulty ends up being you may be getting blended into the calculation of your wage rate, the fact that you have a Chrysler plant that goes through retooling on a regular basis, or a nuclear power plant in Byron, really big money, big corporations that can afford to pay really expensive wage rates. Well, they end up pushing the rates up for everybody else in our market. So those are considered our market. So for a city or a village in our area, we end up being hit with a schedule of rates that's like we were those massive international companies, and we're not. So that's why the freedom to have local communities determine their whether they're in or out on prevailing wage, we would still have to act under federal law if there's federal money being spent, Davis-Bacon laws and other laws that apply, like you said, like minimum wage. But this is something that, from my standpoint, I think it's important that cities have the opportunity to evaluate, and I think a lot may decide, hey, we want to keep it, or we're going to negotiate some alternative rate for a given type of thing, activity that's occurring, that's going to fit for our needs in our community. I'm not against the trades. I'm not against collective bargaining, but I want to have the freedom to truly negotiate a deal at a local level with our fire union, police union, for example, than have the terms set and only have a very narrow band in which we can negotiate within, which kills us right now. And that's why our I get hit. There was a story last night in one of the television stations, had the data and the facts, some of them right, but some of them wrong. We don't determine the tax rate in Rockford as a city government. Our rate is set based on what we determine is our revenue needs. And our revenue needs, for the last 2 years, we've kept flat. But our rate still goes up because valuations go down. That's determined by the township assessor. It's a very complex process. The only thing I can tell people is that we're trying to get as much authority back to control at the local level how our costs are determined. And that's our best chance of being able to be good, wise stewards of our taxpayers' dollars.